Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Yes,
ma'am.
sir. Thanks so for good morning. Please, why about the participants? I thought some of them are on site.
Not yet. We have like 2 minutes more, 3 minutes more. So I'll let you know as soon as we have them available.
Okay, because we have only by now our participants. We have just 2 minutes for
Yes.
part of it. That's why I'm wondering.
Okay, Dr. Ngozi, you're on the panel? Oh, wonderful.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, ma'am.
So please, if you have the contact of Professor Olu, I thought he's here in Nigeria for the event.
Yes, I am here in Nigeria, and I'm here already online.
Okay, all right. Good morning.
Good morning, Prof. How are you?
We have one of the panelists here present.
Good morning.
We have
Nice
someone
to
present here.
connect with you. Yes. Yeah, okay, nice. I hope the panelists too will be here shortly because it's already time.
We have one of the panelists here present.
Okay, we only have one person so far. So maybe we can start something. Good morning. Nice to meet you. So that we can start on time.
Good morning, everyone.
We are conscious
online as well.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning.
I'm a panelist and I'm online. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so I think we can start. So we have to be conscious since you are among the panelists. Maybe along the way, the other panelists will arrive so as not to delay too much. So good morning, everyone. Appreciate the presence of the editors, Professor Oluwafunmilayo Para-Mallam and Professor Mojubaolu Okome, who I believe should be here on this edited book on gender and development in Nigeria, concepts, issues, and strategies. And this book is published in celebration of Professor Oluwafunmilayo Para-Mallam 60th birthday. So, Ma, I wish you happy birthday, a belated birthday, and many more fruitful years and celebration on that. Amen. So, Ma,
thank you very much.
on this panel, So this edited book is very extensive, broad, and it covers 7 thematic issues, including culture and communication, governance, political participation, economic development, law, conflict, and so on. And I think it's very, very extensive. I think the distinctiveness is also the fact that it is not just an academic book, because it's also policy oriented, and the diversity of contributors, where we have both academic contributors and at the same time we have activists, we have politicians, we have policymakers, lawmakers, and so on. So I think it's a very distinctive book. And for that reason, we can't review it just as an academic book. We have to look at the key issues discussed in each of the thematic area, because it encompasses gender, is able to give us historical perspective of evolution of gender study, feminism, the different theories. And we know when we talk about gender as a social construction, it's not just about affairs of women, both men and women, but the interlinkage. But because we in Africa, we look at the patriarchal structure of our society, how it has over time marginalized women. But at the same time, we need to understand the key role, importance of women in development in Nigeria and across the world in Africa. So this work focuses essentially on relevance of women in gender development planning at the same time. And then, so I think each panelist will be able to look keenly about the relevance of the issues discussed in each of the thematic. Are they relevant to this particular thematic? And at the same time, the approach to the research, not just methodology, the analysis of the empirical issues, also the recommendation. So, and at the same time, how women frame within all this discourse. Women as people have been marginalized, and we know feminist theory is trying to change perspective about. So at the same time, I look at the fact that the public contributors are not only women, there is also some women. I appreciate that. Though this panel is purely women, I think the organizer should have considered maybe including 1 or 2 men who have also worked on gender issues. And another key important, how it framed the connection, intersection between women private affairs and public affairs, the interlinkage between them, how all these issues perceived, and how is it impact on women, and what are the consequences of all this. So we want to again thank the editor, because it's very, very, I can say in a way, to be able to, gather a lot of people, contributor network, and have 7 different thematic areas. And some of the contributors are people I know very well, even one from my own center. So I commend you, and we appreciate you, because even me as a scholar also on gender study, when I read the book, I saw some very important issues that even some of my research, my teaching on gender. So thank you very much. So now I think we only have 1 panelist, and that is Dr. Esther Ajayi Lowo. So, and I want us to look at, because of the time, so maybe we give you like between 10 to 15 minutes to share your perspective on the book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak about this book. I really appreciate the bridge between scholarship and advocacy and activism on women, gender, and developments in Nigeria, because really, as our chair said, that bridge is always very important, right? And creating that bridge helps us to really attain holistic development around gender and women's issues. So I really appreciate this. And as someone who also started by working on the ground with NGOs, women's rights organizations, and now transitioning to the US and being in a scholarly field, I always appreciate that scholar advocacy and activist bridge a lot. So this is one thing that I really like about this book. I also love the breadth that it covers a whole lot of issues. So that diversity is also really great. I also see a sense of interdisciplinarity as well. So some people writing from feminist lens, some people writing from just gender and development, and some writing from women in politics, political science, and all that. So I really love that. One thing that I've loved to see that I think would contribute to this diversity, inclusivity, and interdisciplinarity would have been maybe a touch of history to think about how did we even get into this present situation, right? So I see this book is very contemporary, but again, I'm always looking for a link between history and the present day, especially because when we think about women, gender, and in particular women's issue in Nigeria, we know that this wasn't how it all began. For most of our cultures, for most of our uh, traditions and all of that, we didn't start from this present state where women are so marginalized in political life, so marginalized in when you think about business, right? Women are there's also that marginalization of women, and we're always trying to break the glass ceiling in every area and aspect of life. So I would have loved to see that historical trajectory of like how did we get here? How did we get to this point where we're talking about all of these stereotypes and marginalization in politics, in finance, in just every phase of life in the family? But I think this really is a great job. And as someone who also teaches transnational gender in articles from to really think about what my students are able to learn about women in Nigeria. But of course, I will be pairing it with some historical background so they know where we started from, and then they can understand what it was pre-colonial era. I mean, I know those eras are not taught in these linear terms, but I'm just trying to contextualize my framing of the link between history and contemporary times. So I will be pairing it with some historical articles and books that will give them the background so they can understand what it was basically pre-colonial. They will understand all of the colonial disruptions that are still ongoing, and then they would be able to view some of these issues from a more critical lens, and they can understand the colonial perspective, the decolonial perspective of not just taking these contemporary issues as they are, but connecting them to colonial disruptions. And so I really again, I appreciate this because this, again, is a book that is written about us, from us, which is something that I appreciate. Some of the readings on African women, we know that predominantly are still from voices that are not us. So it's either sometimes there are more maybe male, or there are more people from outside the culture, the country writing about us. So I really appreciate that this is a book that people have written in connection with their own experience, in connection with their work on the ground, right? And then also with their research interest as well. Another thing that I really appreciate is when I actually took a look at the authors of these papers. These are some people that I've, known for a long time, who have been doing this work and trying to advance women's development, women's human rights in Nigeria, whether it be in terms of advocacy. I saw that Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi has a paper. I know she has been on the ground with What Seed and has been doing quite a lot. I know Dr. Okome, who's also a co-editor, also has a piece in that. And so just looking at the authors who are writing from informed perspective also is something that I appreciate about this book. So I don't want to go into some of the subtopics now, so maybe we'll also be able to get there at some point. But I really like the breadth. I really like one that was also really thinking about international framework, right? And how they are being applied. Where are we at this point? I also like that we have a section for strategies, right? Again, it is one thing to just say these are all the problems about women in Nigeria, political marginalization, all the stereotypes, the harmful practices, and all of that, all of the women's health issues. But it's another thing, it's a good thing to always think about now, where do we go from here? What are some of the strategies that we need to adopt? How do we proceed? How do we resolve some of those problems? So I love that there's a section that also addressed that, so we can all read and think about what we can contribute as scholars, as readers who will be reading these books, and also thinking about some recommendation for policy improvements. It's also not something that I appreciate a lot about this book. So I think this is what I just want to say for now about just the book in itself and my impression and what I'm thinking about it for now. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Esther Ajayi-Lowo, for this very important perspective. Yeah, thank you very much, because I think one key issue I am able to highlight the issue about decolonizing gender studies, feminism, and I think beyond the fact that we are still adopting for a feminist theory, but how do we reframe it in a way to link it to African reality, Nigerian perspective? And you emphasize a lot of issues about marginalization of women, issue about culture, issue about colonialism. And thank you very much. These are very important highlights from the book. So I would like to call on Dr. Funmilayo Agbaje to give us her perspective on the work. Thank you.
Say good morning to everyone. It's morning here. I don't know, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. It's a privilege for me to contribute, to this very distinct and excellent book as published by Dr. ReadersPara-Mallam and Professor Funke Okome. I am very, very sure that there's nothing I want to say that is going to be a departure from what had been said. But I want to discuss some of the rich and layered contributions found in this volume, because I noticed that everything had been said, from economy to political to social, cultural dimensions of gender in Nigeria, and virtually almost all the challenges that we are conversant with were reiterated in this book. But the problem now is some of the strategies that were highlighted and the recommendations. We know what to do. And then now, how do we do them? That is the most critical section that I've been thinking about while reading this book. As editors, these two professors, they have done more than compile papers for us as scholars. They have created a space for intersectionality between gender, the academia, activism, policy, our lived experiences, everything we know. The volume is also a call for us to recenter Nigerian women in the narrative of development. So it's not just for us to challenge the Eurocentric or the elite or the abstract framing of gender. And I will use the word of Professor Para-Mallam, gender justice. So in order for us to achieve this, we've been told that there is a backdrop, which is very clear in this book, and that is Nigeria remains a deeply gender unequal society. Some will say patriarchal, some will have avoid that word. There is gender inequality in Nigeria. Women are faced limitation in access to power, to land, to education, to healthcare, to economic opportunity. Women are being objectified in all the things that are going on in this country. Women are used as subjects by Boko Haram insurgents. Women are being excluded from making crucial decisions that has to do with their lives. So there is cultural silencing which persists. I know that when we say gender, we are not only referring to women, but like the chair already said, the peculiarity of our Nigerian landscape make it critical that when we talk about gender in Nigeria, before we know it, we are virtually talking women. Because women are usually. I saw some of the lamentations that are persist in scholarship, but this book has done more than lamenting. So I want to commend the editors. I want to say that thank you to them. Thank you to the editors for giving us this invaluable book, and we are very grateful for it. And then for offering a team architecture that speaks to the intersection of history, policy, religion, economic security, and of course, cultural expression. If you want to go back into the historical analysis of how gender become this type of analysis, whereby all we have to refer to is about victimization, discrimination, and marginalization, I believe that we will have to look far back enough, because we have history whereby women were made kings. It is documented that women were warriors. We read and we saw some archival materials, that pointed to the fact that women were actually activists, and they were able to come together to fight for the liberation of other women. And in fact, it's been recorded that when one woman speaks, other women will hear wherever they are, and they want to do things in common. So at what point do we get to this analysis whereby women are just being discussed in terms of the problems and the challenges that they are facing? And this seems to dominate gender scholarship in Nigeria. We may not be able to find one single answer to this, but one particular area which this book has also pointed to is the area of our religion and culture. And I want to believe that some of us are products of this. And this is one of this book's strengths. It has balanced engagement with religion and culture. We are all products of this, even though we are scholars. Whether we know it or not, these bias tend to reflect in some of the things that we say or we write, or when we write otherwise, when it comes to the point of implementation, some of the decisions that we make are being affected by some of these social cultural biases that we already have. And this book mentioned that faith leaders and religious spaces can be mobilized when it comes to gender justice. Also, another area that is very important to me, which is my field, is the area of security, conflict, and women's agency. This book addresses the reality of gender-based violence, against women's violence, and it expands the definition of the development and dignity. you look at the areas that I believe Okome had a lot of influence in, which is the political economic lens, which has to do with economic justice and livelihood. I saw some of the chapters interrogating how globalization, the structural adjustment programs have impacted Nigerian women, especially in informal sector such as agriculture and so on. So, and then looking at all of this, an area that actually resonates with me and which for me was very thought-provoking, aside all that had been mentioned, was the feminism part of it. We have too many voices, which is a good thing in feminist scholarship. And even under African feminists, we have different types of feminism. And then I think this takes me to where I started from. Do we start using some of this theory to address issues as they come, like contextualizing issue? Do we start adapting the feminism when it's adaptable, and then you use modernism when it's adaptable? Or we just have to start thinking of another name? We realize first knowledge and voice, which is particular powerful section in this volume. It focuses on who gets to produce knowledge and speak for Nigerian women. And one thing I've noticed is that mostly elite, the academics and the policymakers tend to do this without putting into consideration women at the grassroots, levels. Who are the active agents of social transformations? It's just the people who sit in classroom, people who sit on their table and they write, or these women out there who are actually walking through and in between both the elite and the traditional institutions. So I want us to think about that. Before I stop, I want to talk about what Para-Mallam and Okome has done in this volume that we should also consider, is that it brings to the fore the issues of gender justice, local agency, and the importance of engaging faith and tribe rather than ignoring them. This, for us, might look simple, but if you look at them critically, and in a context such as Nigeria, these are not something that we can just take with levity. These are not something that can just happen. And we can't just go into many of our structured religious institutions and then you want to influence some of the rigid, I beg to use the word, perception that they already have about gender issues in Nigeria. But I believe it is possible. And I still want to ask, how do we start doing this beyond just writing, beyond just relying on some of the international and national policies that has been put in place? And secondly, they ensure that this book are global and decolonial and lens, just like the first speaker. They did that and we commend them for that. And they urges us that we should center women's again beyond the economic metrics. How do we start, to do this? So this book for me is not an academic book. It is for me an intervention because it's very thought-provoking. You are not only reading, but you are also looking at it in practical lens. What can I do differently? what have I done before that I needed to read. For me, it is an intervention that cuts across social, political, religious, all spheres of life. And it reminds us that development is not gender neutral. It's by voice, but once. That is the critical reflection that is still on my mind. Thank you very much.
Very much. For this review of the book, and we appreciate that you are looking at not just the issue, how women also responding, and then looking at the fact that can't putting it when women as victims. We need to also look at how women are responding to this challenge, how those policies, the strategy deployed to address, how they actually been tailored to address the concern of women. And so also the actors that both the state, non-state actors that are key to addressing this challenge. Thank you. So we need to move to the next discussant. And I think we have here Dr. Elizabeth Animasham. Thank you.
I want to thank the editors. Okay. So thank you for having me. I feel very privileged to be on this panel and engaging in this conversation with very respected panelists and a book of resource. I expected to speak as the first speaker, so I knew that the initial three speakers would have done lots in terms of trying to explain the sections and all that. So I began to imagine, what am I going to say? So I decided to write a review that speaks to my own work and what I could relate with as I read the book. Of course, it's a fantastic book, and it covers a range of issues around gender and development. And aside from that, it's also foregrounds specific areas that each of us would relate with. So gender discourse, which is initially imagined as a marginal issue, has become a mainstream factor in the day-to-day relations of men and women in the social, economic, and politics. Whether it's the rhetoric or a meaningful consideration remains to be created. But what is certain is that engaging gender is germane to world politics, national and societal development. Against this backdrop, Oluwafunmilayo, Para-Mallam, and Mojubaolu Okome's book titled Gender and Development in Nigeria, Concept, Issues and Strategies offer a wide range of robust insight into different facets of the dynamics of gender and development. This work offers great analytical and theoretical debates, practical experiences, rich historical constructions of different layers of meanings that contribute to gender norms, expectations, and response over time in Nigeria. This book is a careful selection of 30 high-profile authors, very high-profile, who produced 30 chapters broken into 6 sections. A very good book. This book is both needed and timely. It comes at a time when issues of gender, patriarchy, feminism, and masculinity is not just an academic exercise, but a discourse that permeates every cadre of life and social strata in Nigeria. I particularly refer to this book as a textbook. It's an ambitious, comprehensive compilation of core debates in gender, and an easy and also an in-depth read of the conceptualization of gender in Nigeria. Each section could easily be expanded to be a book. Each chapter closes and builds on the previous as a story, a narrative, and as a thread of the beautiful soul fabric. I'm going to skip where I talked about the sessions and what they encompass. Maybe we have to go and get the book so that we understand. So I will now go to my own thinking and my thoughts about the book. And I've titled it From Natasha Koti to Saliu, to Anna Saliu, Gender, Production of Vulnerability and Sexuality and Violence. Natasha Koti is a popular person in Nigeria, the Senator of the Nigeria. And I was using her, I was thinking about her as I read the chapters of the book, in my thought of women, the expressions of women of different strata in Nigeria. So I used that as a prototype, as it were, like a continuum from her to Anna. Anna Saliu is a self-acclaimed sex worker around the Lagos, around somewhere in Lagos State, in the Alaba area of Lagos. She's actually dead now. So she was a sex worker who was lynched by her customers. And the reason for her being lynched was that one of the customers alleged that a Quran was found in her room. So it was incomprehensible for them to equate a sex worker owning a Quran. So sexuality and spirituality, they could not conceive of it. And for that, it was justified for her to be murdered. So I use those two personalities to think about the chapters that this book brings before. So I say gender and development is transformative. The transformation should, however, be fluid, manifesting differently according to space, socioeconomic, and human security needs. Females in Nigeria are not monolithic. There are different categories who define development according to their urgent and their needs. The category of women like Natasha Koti, and in bracket I put many of the contributors of this book are in that category, may see development as a purposive and planned project. Others may consider it a social transformation, while some others define development as an enhancement of their individual choices, a retributive justice. Or for someone like Anna Saliu, and in extension, other categories that are considered as the most vulnerable of women in Nigeria community, see development as a chance at life, an environment where core aspects of their human security is assured by the state and by society, even if she's on the fringe of sexuality or illicit sexuality as constructed by Nigerian law. Inspired by my reading of No Woman's Papa, which is easily the most exciting chapter for me. No Woman's Papa in a Husband's House, the cultural production of hegemonic masculinity in Nigeria cited by Professor Para-Mallam on page 102. Then also I enjoy reading Sex, Gender, Politics, Issues in Nigerian Governance by Professor Okome, page 135, and Professor Chris Gaja's work on gender in Nigerian peace and security, architecture, strategic pathway from the margin to the mainstream. I imagine diverse experiences of gender and development by different categories of females, and the position of vulnerability of both females and male based on the construction of gender in Nigeria. And more importantly, the nuanced and actual widespread hegemonic masculine responses to women like Natasha, and overt imposed justification of violence on criminalized women as honor by society. I argue that both categories are in need of development. Their experience is a right prototype of the diversities in the manifestation of violence, but also similar as both are reflective of the skewed gendered and misogynistic responses to women and men who dare to be different, or successful, or deviant. Natasha Koti, who we all know, a recent experience of alleged sexual abuse and the predominant skewed perception from many Nigerian men and women across various strata is a reflection of general standpoint on gender. And it points us to question whether gender consciousness and mainstreaming is the big talk and policy on protecting women's minorities. If it is a big talk and a policy of protecting female minorities, indeed a serious deliberation or a more rhetoric by the political elite to stop political points. It is also one way to assess the actual state of Nigeria's gender and development. According to this book, Natasha and the other women she represents have refused to stay in husband's house. She inadvertently provides a justification for sexual abuse and a devaluation of her humanhood and humanness. Staying in husband's house is both metaphoric and natural. We must think of it in that way. Natasha may be married, but our audacity to contest space and power with men, to assert and insist on her agency is an affront to staying in husband's house. Again, page 176, Professor Okome stated that women are seen, I'm quoting now, women are seen as flawed if they have any independent notion of interest. Professor Pramara discussed this influence of the term staying in husband's house and woman's wrapper in the term of the role of language as a social action that explains, I'm quoting now, that explains or justifies virtually all forms of gender-based disparities and discriminations that exist in Nigerian society. This is on page 142. In chapter 6, Professor Okome noted that although structural violence is pervasive in Nigeria, there are gendered, religious, class, and regional variations that cause more or less marginalization. This is exactly the case of Anna Salu. Laws and policies are postulated in Nigeria that criminalize already marginalized categories. These are further heightened by religious ideologies that disregard core aspects of survival, of life, and of human security. Gender is not a women's study. I began to have this feeling that many of the chapters were emphasized. I understand that we have a lot of issues as women, but I was hoping that the book would be a little balanced in a way, because it seemed like gender was equated to women's study. Yes. Gender is not women's study. Men daily contend with conforming to the idea of manhood. The normative Nigerian idea of masculinity does not give allowance for individual differences and suffocates the audacity to express alternate experience and identities. And more importantly, to voice out violence when they occur. In reading this book, I'm inspired to think about what vulnerable categories of criminalized persons, those whose sexual expression is considered illicit and is a threat to their life. How do we manage cultural? So I'm asking, how do we manage cultural hegemonic dictates and gender expectation whilst being conscious of their survival and of their human security? The 28th chapter by Petri Omlong, I particularly love that name. Gender issues in terrorism and insurgency in Nigeria, discuss the role of state actors to protect women during insurgency. However, sexual abuse as a consequence of insurgency was discussed as if it was an exclusive female issue. So I ask, is it an oversight to capture? The issues of men that were not captured on page 28. I ask, is it an oversight to capture the sexual abuse of men in terrorist attack, or it is a lack of information on the occurrence, or as it is the practice in Nigeria, it's a reluctance to discuss men's experience of sexual violence because it pushed to a fore a deliberate action by violent actors to emasculate men during violent conflicts and reduce them to, in quotes, woman's wrapper. Conflict-related sexual violence is a growing reality in terrorism. A calculated attempt to make men look feminized and homosexual, especially in a space like Nigeria, when heteronormativity is pervasive and an alternate sexual expression is criminalized, and may distort male identity, social acceptance, and potent gender for male victims. This speaks to the nuanced and complex reality that frames Nigerian gender and development. In conclusion, this book opens up opportunities for further thinking and research on the subject matter. It has not claimed to be an all-encompassing book. However, it has successfully explored the most obvious and important aspects of gender.
Thank you. Thank you very much. doctor,
Not done,
because
Chair.
we have to be conscious of time. Thank you so much. So please, maybe you have 1 more minute to round up so that we can. Hello, Dr. Esther. Dr. Esther Animasha.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. I said, can you round up just 1 more minute
All
to
right,
round
just
up your,
a
because you
line. Yes, just a line. Sorry, I didn't know you'd be sending messages. I strongly suggest that it should be available in every department and library in Nigerian universities. I do not know how this can be done, but I can only recommend. So I have some questions, but the major question I had was, many of the authors are very senior academics and people that I consider, of course, experienced, but I also consider them very close to the political airline. So I began to imagine if this data or the choice of this particular research will remain the same, if maybe junior academics or any research career have the support to write a book like this. So how does their positionality affect in any way their analysis of the data that they've got? That's the only question I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very important perspectives on the book. And then we appreciate, because one thing is that it also brings us to understand more, because planning. And I think the key purpose and essence of this book is to highlight this. And we look at the fact that women are very vital to development in our society. But the question is, are they being empowered to play key role in development? And this is the challenges we have across. And you have, when we look at gender, role of women, capacity in development in society is not gender specific. And we need to always understand that by undermining or marginalizing women, implementation, undermine development in Nigeria, Africa, general. And this is why we need to continue to emphasize this, because in terms of economy, political, and so on, technology, which this book highlights all this. So we need to continue to see how we can continue to highlight this, and also the role we can play in addressing these challenges. And now we move to Dr. Ungozika Obi. And so thank you very much.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ngozika Obiani. I'm from the University of Nigeria. I am a historian of women's studies, conflict, and memory studies. So when I saw the book, I was happy because I've been teaching African women. I taught African women in history for over 10 years in University of Nigeria. And it was a new course introduced in my department. And I was given the course as a graduate assistant. So I had no material or where to start from. It was newly introduced. So I had to build the course from the scratch. So each time I see literature of this nature, I'm always interested to know what is happening, even though I've not been constantly around and the course has been given to other younger colleagues. But I want materials that I can also help them in knowing about women in Africa. So this particular text, like Elizabeth said, is really a textbook. When I saw the volume, I was like, oh my God, 676 pages. So it was so much with 7 sections. So, and but despite this, the paper, especially section 1 and section 7, resonate closely to what I'm doing. Because when you look at each of the sections, and the linkages, you found out that what is linking all of them, whether they are in governance, politics, law, economic development, health, environment, energy, and sustainable development, or conflict and peace, the section 1 is at the forefront because it is about gender, how we socialize, how do we internalize gender norms, in the sense that when you were born, it has already started. They will tell you you are a woman. Don't sit like that. Don't sit like this because you are a woman. Even when we play children's play, like you cook, you will find out that we've already taken that position of being the one to cook, acting mother during those play. I don't know how many play with sand. I did so much. So when we were cooking, we were already practicing what our mother did. So in this way, the men in that, we call it ulokochi, we use palm fronds to, make something like a house. So in that, the man is already, my brother will be acting like my dad, and invariably I'm acting like my mother, having my younger brother, sibling at the back. So it has been socialized, it has been internalized that this is how it's supposed to be. And in this process, we take it like that from the family to our school, and the next thing is we carry it to the general public. So the men are the politics. They will also want us to behave. I'm happy that you raised the Natasha issue because it was already part of the things I was considering in my conversation with this book. So I love that first chapter because that first chapter is the thing that is linking the rest of the chapters in this particular work. That is the major thing that attracted me. How, especially number 2, how gender norms are being internalized. I'm working on a book on gender and sexuality for more than 10 years, and this book I've not been able to publish it, where you have some of these cultures. Men, when I was asked by editors of African Identities, what is the origin of this particular gender norm, I said there is no origin. It's when men, they decided to come together during the process of migration and settlement. They came together and they decided to enact some of these norms. And in the process, they are the ones telling people how persons should behave, what are the norms, what are the laws, what are the punishments for violating the laws. And in this process, you find out that in this, they are the ones that dictate what should be punishable. That is why in some cultures, when a woman cheats, she is punished. It's not that she's punished by the people, but punished by the gods also. But a man will teach, and the gods will not raise an eyelid. I keep asking questions. Why is it so? Because the society has made it in such a way that there should be gender construct. So this gender construct is made by the men. I had I had a conversation with Professor Sharon, the first panel, a lady from Asia was saying that she didn't know her gender or something like that, if I got her properly, that she wasn't aware, that it was at a later point that she get to know this is this and this is that. But in my own case as a baby, I found out that I've already been socialized into this. And that is why when Professor Okome wrote about women in politics, you find out that during politics, they want to use women. They will give them bag of rice, Maggi, and the rest. They will be the one to mobilize at that grassroots level. But when it comes to power sharing, when it comes to meeting, why women cannot participate? Because those things, like Professor Kume mentioned, they are monetized. Women cannot pay that amount of money. You can't pay 5 million to get a party card. You can't even go to the nocturnal meeting. I heard one of my professors in my department that women that participate in politics are prostitutes. Because of what? Because the meeting, the major decisions are taken in the midnight. And there are some certain things that women cannot do. As a married woman, we always want to maintain what? The family. Because immediately you step outside of maintaining that family, then they will claim you don't want to, the health of the society, the health of the family is on women. That was why when Elizabeth, that's why I don't like in a book, author misreader like this to be the last speaker, because others previously we say everything that you actually want to say. So you found that, like in Ghana, you found that now for the land to yield bountifully, it's the responsibility in the women. So women need to maintain. You don't need to do anything that is called irresponsible in order to purify the land. So I keep asking the question, why is the burden on women? If a child behaves well, it's the woman. If he doesn't, it's on women. If the land is violated, it's the woman that should perform the rituals. Why are these burdens? So that is what I'm saying. Even as Nigeria, sometimes we need to, I'm part of the people that don't believe that colonialism did this on women. No, I keep arguing. There are certain traditions that are already existent that are against women. These traditions that are against women were just reinforced by colonialism, because when the colonial masters came in, they came with their Victorian ideas that women should be what? Seen and not heard. So they now saw. So when the men saw it, they asked our cultures and norms and the things that affected women in politics, the law, and their human rights. That is why a woman will come, maybe because Akpabio's wife wanted the husband to keep loving her. She will come as I will sue Natasha, I will sue you in National Daily. You are not even thinking about, you are suing her. So that is why when you look at it now, you see what is going on over 3 years about Yul Edochie and the wife. You can see that men are blaming the woman for stepping out of a marriage she says she's not comfortable with. And it became a crisis. Do you know they've labeled her a prostitute, that she wants to test other men? When I was doing my interview on why the English tradition or Leku tradition should punish a woman for doing what? For cheating, and punish a woman for giving the siblings or the family some part of her productive labor. Men I interviewed say that women that are investigating this are women that wants to test other men. So when we talk about human development, education and health, politics, all these are all encompassed in our tradition, in our gender norm, and we've been socialized to accept it. And my problem is that we women, we've also accepted the culture points of view. We don't even help ourselves. So in this way, I now go to conflict and peace. You find out that when it comes to conflict and security, women suffer much. When the war drum is singing, women are not the ones. The men are the ones talking. Iran and Israel are talking. No woman is in part of that. But when the war starts, women will be raped. Their children will be killed. Their husband will be killed. And at the end of the day, they become the breadwinners. In the process, they've been burdened to take care of the family. They suffer trauma and nobody cares about that. When in the peace process, the men on suit will talk about the peace process. So these are my takeaway. But as Elizabeth asked, I said, I was looking at the title and said, it could have been a woman, something woman, not gender, because we know that gender is not women. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ngozika Obiani, I think emphasis on gender norm, which I can also say cultural norm. And then one key importance is the fact that how do we frame this cultural norm? Even among us women, we have different perspectives. And we must also understand that how we apply norms, how it impacts the role of both men and women.
Yes.
And also the impact on women marginalization over time. So I used to tell my students that when we women, we are in the sense that you are the one training your male child. How are you training them to respect women, to understand the hero of women, both men and women? Training them to be able to see that both our capacity in the society is not gender specific. Both men and women have Gender norm, cultural norm is very, very complex. And we all need to understand our accountability in this challenge. So I just discovered that Professor Mojubaolu Okome is with us now. And we also have here Dr. Titi Loe Ajayi. We just have about 30 minutes or so left. So we have to be conscious of time. I will give Dr. Titi Lope Ajayi just about 6 or 7 minutes because we are going to time. So limiting time, and use that time for your own lifestyle. Thank you.
Certainly, Prof. Good morning. Good morning. I'm sorry I arrived late at my phone on the way back from another appointment, and it just wasn't. So I'm sorry for that. I will be as brief as possible. So, first, in my positionality here is a little bit complicated because I was part of the process that used the book, and I will talk about that in a minute. But I think first is a fundamental foundational and very cohesive leading thinkers across anything that it's the first part of the meeting. Just to see actions across in various of life. So as somebody who's in development and now with academia, see to segment this voice see in addressing any aspects of gender, it complex internality of the contributors, it is accessible. It's comprehensive in thematic and sectoral coverage and offers deep insights into different aspects of gender dynamics across different facets of life in the context of Nigeria. One of the things I appreciate about this book is that it really is an opportunity and a platform for us as Nigerians, as Africans, to tell our own stories on our own terms. I heard a comment earlier about how there's so much focus on women. I agree. It's, there could be more nuance at that level. But at the same time, it does capture the state of gender in Nigeria today, which focuses or tends to focus more on women's disempowerment because that's one of the prime areas of concern. One of the things I appreciated, I think it was either the first or the second chapter, was the coverage of nuances of gender construction identity, which clearly in our context are not as binary as the global north would have us believe. And this is the advantage of us being able to create the space to tell our own story so that we're able to say, this is who we are as a people, how gender plays out in our own context. So also, given the ongoing gender crisis in Nigeria, and I think the story of Senator Natasha, which has been mentioned, is an illustrative episode. The book provides a critical and timely stock-taking of the state of gender and development in Nigeria today. Also, it provides analysis of what has worked, what needs to be done better, what needs to be changed, and what are the possible ways forward in which we could achieve that transformation. I also find it a powerful counter-narrative to some ideas that are emerging around the post-feminist age. This book helps us to see that while Nigeria has made some advances, that there's still a considerable amount of work to do. And I think it's a significant political statement in the context of the growing anti-gender movement, both in Nigeria and Africa and globally. I think the previous speaker mentioned the importance of looking at culture and communication. So aspects of our social life and our socialization that we tend to take for granted as people, but that are really at the root of how some of the gender inconsistencies we see in our culture and in our society and our politics, how they come into being, how they are sustained. And I think anybody coming to this, especially if they are not so deeply ingrained in gender studies, is then able to see from scratch how these ideas are formed and in what ways they need to be countered, so that we're not looking at it just from top down, but from the bottom up. I will end just by sharing how when I was completing my PhD in international relations a few years ago, my study was on Bring Back Our Girls and transnational women's activism from the Global South. I struggled, and I think the previous speaker talked about access to materials on gender. I struggled to find consolidated writing on gender and development in Nigeria. And it's not to say that they didn't exist or that they don't exist, but what I found was dispersed and it was quite dated. So um, a volume like this really helps to place gender in the context of Nigeria in a clearer historical, structural, and global perspective. And certainly, if I had had access to this kind of material, then it would have made my work a lot easier. So I would like to end by just saying congratulations to the co-editors and the contributors for giving us this precious gift of collective knowledge. It is a first step. And it does say, I think in the preface, that it does not claim or aspire to, cover all dimensions of gender in the context of Nigeria. But I would just like to recognize that it's an important first step, one that I would like to see built on, possibly as part of a periodic publication series that could come in different volumes, maybe on an annual basis. And in this evolution, it would allow us to continue the scholarly and policy engagement and serve as some kind of a map and also build a body of knowledge which we can look back on over time and see the progression of gender studies in Nigeria from this time forward. I agree with the speaker who said that it should be essential reading for universities and knowledge institutions. My last comment would be about my involvement in the production process. So as much as it's an important knowledge product, it's also a significant political project. Related to that, I'm just sharing my reflections on being part of the production process. I think, first of all, that this was a labor of love, driven by deep intentionality. And projects like this are shaped by as much by the realities of global knowledge politics, as well as the urgent need for Africa to own its own narratives and to stake its claim in academic and policy discourses. I want to underline the importance of knowledge building. There's a chapter that quotes Oyewumi's work, where there's a quote here that says, knowledge about the West is cultivated over decades, but knowledge about Africa is supposed to be absorbed, so to speak, through the mother's breast milk. To me, what this says is that we tend to take for granted the knowledge that we hold as scholars and as policy people, but it needs to be outed, it needs to be documented, and it needs to be discussed so that we build on it. Second is to highlight the power of collaborative community. The contributors to this book came together not just to write, but really to contribute to change. So it's a political project. The last thing is that if we are to sustain work like this, it has to be properly resourced, both to reward people who contribute to it, but also to support the long and complex process of quality knowledge production. So thank you to the co-editors for the privilege of being part of this, and congratulations on publishing this excellent book. Thank you.
It should unmute.
Pastor Babatunde, you're muted.
Prof, your mic is off.
You're muted.
Maybe I missed it. She said the direct
Muted.
No, sorry. Okay, sorry. That time. Because we don't have sufficient time and we're not aware gathered. We appreciate your important input, particularly the discourse subject, not just Nigeria and other Africa. You emphasize what other discussants has also said about gender socialization and then the community-based approach. But then when we look at the reality, we look at even the division within feminist scholars, within our society across women, professional women, rural women, grassroots women, about their interpretation of this gender norm and how it impacts on capacity to address them over time. So now, because of time, I think we should give our distinguished editor, Professor Oluwafunmilayo Para-Mallam and Professor Mojubaolu Okome the opportunity to respond. And again, thank you very much for this important and very distinctive book. Thank you.
Since I came late, I would just say, let Professor Para-Mallam respond. And then, if I have anything to add, I will. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. So, Professor Oluwafunmilayo. Okay, Karam. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. It is indeed a great privilege to be here and a great source of joy. And I know I speak on behalf of both myself and Professor Okome. I want to thank the chair for chairing the session and all the panelists for the amazing, the very in-depth, thought-provoking contributions. And it's highly gratifying for us to see that our burden, our purpose in amplifying African feminist voices and providing a volume that will go beyond articulating issues and go beyond knowledge production for the sake of knowledge, but also serve as a policy advocacy tool informed by policy engaged research to bring about real gender transformative moving forward rather than just, rehashing the issues. It has really resonated. We also sought to provide a volume that could be used by schools and colleges, universities and colleges across the nation. And I know that this reflects the heart of both myself and Professor Okome. Let me backtrack a bit and really, first and foremost, appreciate most sincerely Professor Mojubaolu Okome, my senior colleague. Somebody had admired her work for a very long time, even citing her in my PhD work, for agreeing to shelve so much that she had on her table to contribute to edit this volume and even be a contributor. Let me also seize this opportunity to really thank all the contributors. Indeed, it was a labor of love. Nobody was remunerated. And it was a mark of conviction and commitment to the cause of gender equality, gender justice, and gender transformation. That said, just to comment on a couple of issues that I've highlighted here, and I will be fast. I recognize that we are out of time. Somebody asked the question as to why there was no historical section, a section. And in fact, it would interest you to know that during the book review, Professor Shedrack Best, who reviewed the volume, also said as much, that he would have loved to see a historical section. And I guess that is something that we probably, if we bring out another volume, we will consider integrating. But also to say that we expected that each writer would have a historical section within their own sphere of analysis. But that is well taken. Somebody else also highlighted the issue of gender. Maybe we should have named it women. But that's a misunderstanding of what gender is actually all about. Gender is not just about highlighting the impact of something on men and women, but gender is about identities and their formation. It's about roles and responsibilities and relationships of power and how society ascribes value to people based on sex. So gender is structural, is systemic, is also deeply ingrained in a culture-based and historical. Then also we need to consider this that in terms of gender, women tend to be on the back foot across every segment and every sector of gendered reality. For example, 95% of the statistics say that 95% of victims of sexual violence during conflict are female. It doesn't mean that there are no male victims. There are, but they constitute 5%. They are important, and it is important to articulate their issues. And that is why we decided to look at masculinities and also some other things. But I think another volume will go further in delving into the impacts of these issues that we've highlighted and across the sectors on the male counterpart. Somebody also asked whether how we bring about change. I think that resonated across. So we've articulated policy recommendations and strategies, but how do we really go about it? And I would just want to quickly put forward a couple of areas I think we need to highlight. The first is the issue of addressing our collective consciousness. Karl Marx talked about false consciousness among the proletariat, and it is clear that women and men in Nigeria have a false consciousness. On the one hand, the women have a consciousness that has led to our complicity and our compliance in our own oppression. And on the other hand, the men have a male supremacist complex that makes them feel entitled both to women's bodies and to women's time, women's talents, resources, and everything. We must address this consciousness, this false consciousness in our society. And other societies that have brought about radical change did not do it without addressing the mindset, the consciousness that needs to be transformed, because systems are built by people. The other thing that we also need to address very clearly is the issue of ensuring that women break through the decision-making space, because power is what allocates value. And unless you are in positions of power and authority, you cannot reallocate, reassign, and redefine what is valuable in society and what gets onto the policy-making agenda. And for too long, women have been excluded from all spaces of decision-making, precisely so that they are not able to redefine what is valuable, what is important, and what must change in society. So those two areas are quite fundamental and foundational to any sort of change that we might have. Let me stop there. There's so much else to say, but I know that my senior colleague, Professor Okome, would also have something to weigh in on these matters. And I'd like to give her the floor. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Oluwafunmilayo Para-Mallam. So I will give Professor. We also appreciate your view, perspective on this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And I apologize for being late. I'm not feeling well. The book, yes, indeed, was a labor of love. And I have to commend my co-editor for doing a lot of the heavy lifting and for also doing the work of ensuring publication. It was a bit, it was challenging. So I appreciate also Dr. Titilope Ajayi for how she assisted me in, pulling the chapters together and also as a labor of love. So I thank you very much. I thank the panelists who looked through this voluminous book and have given us such good questions as well as comments and suggestions. Well, so gender is not about women, but the effects of the power relations that gender entails has very serious implications for women on a multiplicity of levels. And, the negative effects of the gender relations also tends to devolve more on women. And especially in the patriarchal masculinist society that we have in Nigeria, and the ways in which our social institutions push us to conform. So, and then, when you have an edited book, you cannot tell people what to write, really. I think people have a right to approach a subject in a way that is meaningful to them, because, this is their intellectual product. This is how they're reasoning about the subject matter. So I think it's quite okay for the book not to be like a propaganda thing on this is how we, the editors, see it. And so this is what people must write. I think also, what is change? When is change coming, or how is change coming? Well, I love everything that Professor Para-Mallam said. I just want to add that politics should not be a spectator sport. It is not about elite women or academic women or women who have now seen the light about what the challenges are. It's about everybody. And the change is not only political in terms of changing our institutions and the way in which they function and respond and make policies. The ways in which we also implement policies, because Nigeria has a very fine gender document that has a lot of very laudable ideals and aspirations, but it is not being seriously implemented. It is not being implemented, let me even not say seriously. So the push for this implementation has to come from everybody across the board in society. And that push from populace to the governing institutions and to the persons that we elect is not really very well done in Nigeria yet. There's a tendency to call the president the father of the nation. If it's your father, you are appealing to your father to be generous and magnanimous. You are not demanding what your rights are. So even the discourses and our behavior and the performativity of our daily lives have to change. Then there are things that have to change within the home. There are things that have to change within the community. There are things that have to change in all our institutions, educational, the social, like the churches, and then in the political terrain itself. So this is a tall order, because if you look at any movement, the people who are actually acting concertedly to make change tend to be the minority. Majority of people sit on the fence and would rather enjoy the benefits of the change that comes. Plus, we are not even all together when it comes to what change we're demanding. Even among feminists, there are people who are anti-abortion, There are people who believe in modest dressing, and there are people who believe that, nobody should police our bodies. So coming together as groups of people who don't necessarily buy into the same agenda. We have also different class interests. We have different interests based on our positionality. It's going to take a lot of work in order to begin to take away the advantages of power that men have built into the systems that we have, and make a change in a society where men and women can function as equals, where Nigeria treats all of us alike and gives us the rights and privileges that we deserve, especially for women who have contributed tremendously to national development, and there's still a tendency to relegate women into the background. Now, in terms of men, and men also suffering some injustices as a result of the gender relations, yes. But, I hope we heard the statistics Professor Para-Mallam cited about war, that, 5% of men also suffer from these problems that 95% of women face. So how is it that then, when you're going to write about such a subject, you're going to privilege the 5%, Plus, I think also, frankly, that men are overrepresented. Male issues are overrepresented. So this is an opportunity, a first opportunity to take a stab at this issue and amplify Nigerian scholars' voices. And you also notice that some men responded to the call and contributed to the book. So, this is a beginning, and I think the best is yet to come. I'm done. I think we want to hear from the audience.
Thank you so much, our distinguished senior professor. We appreciate you. I want to borrow Professor Oluwafunmilayo that you have also empowered, because one thing I observed is the fact that this book covers some very relatively unexplored issues across the 7 thematic areas. And I want to also emphasize the comment of Professor Para-Mallam about what gender studies constitute. I think we need to review it. How do we understand it based on African reality? Like what Professor Esther Ajayi Lowo raised about decolonizing gender. Then Professor Okome, Mojubaolu raised the point that it is the role, responsibility of each and everyone, both male and female. And how do we address the issue, even from the local level? I think we need to take cognizance. She raised an important part that it's not that we have not identified the problem. We know it. There have been a lot of policy recommendations, but the implementation aspect is a key challenge we continue. And also, we must understand the division among and within women. The urban, rural, and so and are also impact on capacity of the few women who have the ability to make changes. Because then we have attended so many academic conferences, and one key issue is that how are women supporting women? So I think I appreciate the fact that all discuss raise critical issues. I said at the beginning that we have to look beyond this. We have to look at this book beyond the academic principle because of the discipline. It encompasses both academic and policy-oriented issues. And I appreciate all discussants for highlighting both that. So we thank you very much. We thank our distinguished and senior professor. We also thank all the discussants, my colleagues, all of you for bringing out important and salient issues about this work. And we also see what role, what contribution are we making. Each of us, among us, we have academic, we have those working with civil society and so on. Let's continue to make effort to make changes. And what can we do, both in terms of our scholarship, in terms of even our day-to-day lives, in terms of our contribution to our society to address the gender issue, because we continue to look at, we continue to see ways up, and we continue to make impact in a way that is meaningful. So again, we thank each and every one of you. And at the same time, Professor Mojubaolu, sorry to hear that you have not been feeling well. And then we wish you the recovery. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you. And we also appreciate the organizer of Lagos Study Association for giving us this opportunity to talk about a key issue in our society relating to gender and development. So thank you very much. And we wish you all.
Thank you too for caring, Prof. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
You can see there because I looked at a couple course. Yes.
Yes, can we, what's the question? Is it from the audience? Hello?
Yeah, they are sending it, ma'am. Let's go.
The discussants have gone. Okay. The discussant now. No, she's back. She's back.
Can we just say so that we can reflect? Since we are conscious, we have 2 more minutes. Yes, let us have.
Yes, they are sending the question.
So we will leave it to those panelists at the event to discuss, and maybe, but you can let us know what it is so that we.
It's for the editor.
Oh, it's for the editor.
It's for the editor.
Okay, okay. It's for the editor, ma'am. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Prof. Prof. Babatunde, thank you.